There is a promise hiding in every night sky, and it is a promise the sky has never once kept. You look up, you see thousands of stars, and something old in you whispers, someday we will go. Every science fiction story you have ever loved runs on that whisper. Every starship, every federation, every distant colony under a strange sun, all of it resting on one assumption so deep we never say it out loud. The assumption that the stars are destinations, that the gulf between us and them is a matter of engineering, of patience, of a few more centuries of cleverness. Tonight I am going to be more honest with you than the whisper is, because I have spent a long time with the real numbers, the real physics, the real proposals, and the conclusion is as clear as it is unwelcome. We are almost certainly never going, and by the end of this journey you will understand exactly why, barrier by barrier, not as a mood, not as pessimism, but as arithmetic. And I want to say something up front, because this is a sleep channel and you came here for wonder, and you might be bracing for a night of disappointment. This is still a journey of wonder. It turns out that understanding precisely why the stars are out of reach is one of the most awe-inducing journeys in all of science. A tour through the deepest laws of the universe, the tyranny of the rocket equation, the absolute wall of light speed, energy budgets that swallow civilizations, dust grains that strike like bombs, ships that must outlive nations. And by the end, I promise, the untouchable stars will mean more to you, not less. Because there is a strange gift waiting at the bottom of this honesty, and we will find it together in the final minutes. Before we begin the case, 3 quick things, and then we descend. If you are new here, subscribe, because this channel makes long, slow, deeply researched journeys through the universe, built for the end of your day, made to be listened to in the dark. Press the like button, because it truly does tell the platform to carry this to the next sleepless mind wondering about the stars. And leave a comment telling me where in the world you are listening from and what time it is there, because I read every single one, and there is something I love about this channel's map of midnight. The knowledge that this same honest journey is unfolding right now in a dorm in Manila, a truck cab in Texas, a quiet kitchen in Warsaw. Wherever you are, stay to the end, because the final barrier, the one almost nobody talks about, is not made of physics at all, and it may be the most unbreakable of them all. Now settle in, breathe out, and let us slowly ease into this. We have to start by refreshing the wound, by looking one more time, briefly, at the distance itself, because everything that follows flows from it. The nearest star to our sun is Proxima Centauri, 4¼ light years away, and if you have traveled with this channel before, you know what that means. But it bears one more telling, because the mind sheds this number like water, and it must be poured again. 4¼ light years is 40 trillion kilometers. Our fastest outbound machine, Voyager 1, launched half a century ago, and moving at 17 kilometers every second, would need over 70,000 years to cross it. The fastest human object ever, the Parker Solar Probe, diving deep into the sun's gravity, has touched nearly 700,000 kilometers per hour. And at that speed, sustained in a straight line, which no ship could actually sustain, the crossing to Proxima would still take more than 6,500 years, 6.5 millennia. The pyramids are not yet 5,000 years old. A ship launched at the fastest speed any human machine has ever achieved, aimed at the nearest star that exists, launched on the day the first pyramid stone was laid, would still be traveling tonight, with more than 1,000 years left to go. And Proxima is the closest. The average star in our galaxy is tens of thousands of times farther. This is the wound. Everything tonight is an attempt to heal it, proposal by proposal, and an honest accounting of why each attempt fails. And the first and greatest failure is hiding inside the very machines we celebrate most, the rockets themselves, because the rocket, our proudest tool, carries within its own mathematics a curse so severe that engineers speak of it the way sailors speak of the sea, with respect, with resignation, and with a name. They call it the tyranny of the rocket equation. In 1903, the very year the Wright brothers first flew, a deaf Russian schoolteacher named Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, working alone in a log house, self-taught, mocked by almost no one because almost no one read him at all, published an equation that would govern every rocket that would ever fly, from the first firecracker to the mightiest moon booster, and will govern every rocket that ever will fly forever. And understanding it is understanding why the stars are locked. The idea underneath it is simple and cruel. A rocket moves by throwing mass backward. That is all a rocket is, a machine for hurling part of itself away as fast as possible. And the faster you want the remaining part to go, the more of yourself you must throw. But here is the cruelty. The fuel you will burn later in the journey must itself be accelerated now, which means you need fuel to push your fuel, and then fuel to push that fuel. And the requirement does not add up politely. It multiplies, it compounds, it grows exponentially, and exponential growth against you is the most merciless force in mathematics. Tsiolkovsky's equation makes the cruelty precise. How fast a rocket can ultimately go depends on just two things: the speed of its exhaust and the ratio of its full weight to its empty weight. And the relationship between desired speed and required fuel is exponential, so that every additional increment of final speed demands not an additional scoop of fuel, but a multiplication of the entire rocket. Let me make it physical. The best chemical rocket engines we have ever built, burning hydrogen and oxygen, the finest chemistry allows, produce exhaust moving at about 4.5 kilometers per second. To reach a final speed equal to that exhaust speed, the equation demands that roughly 2/3 of your rocket at launch must be fuel. To go twice as fast, it is not 4/3. The requirement compounds, and by the time you ask for the speeds of interplanetary travel, your rocket is well over 90% fuel, a flying tank of propellant with a sliver of ship riding on top, which is exactly what every real rocket is. The mighty Saturn V stood 110 meters tall and weighed nearly 3,000 tons, and of that, the astronauts, their capsule, and everything that came home weighed about 6 tons. 500 to 1, the great cathedral of fire, to deliver a payload lighter than 2 elephants to the moon, 1 1/3 light seconds away. Now ask the equation about the stars. Suppose we want a chemical rocket to reach just 10% of the speed of light, 30,000 kilometers per second, the sort of speed that makes Proxima a mere 43-year trip. The equation requires the ratio of fuel to ship to be the exponential of the desired speed divided by the exhaust speed, and 30,000 divided by 4.5 is about 6,700, and the exponential of 6,700 is a number with nearly 3,000 digits. There are about 10 to the 80th atoms in the entire observable universe, a number with 81 digits. The fuel required for a chemical rocket to push 1 single kilogram to 10% of light speed exceeds the mass of the observable universe. Exceeds it not by a factor, but by thousands of orders of magnitude. Exceeds it so absurdly that the comparison stops being a comparison and becomes a proof. Chemical rockets will never, can never, under any circumstances, in any configuration, with any budget, reach the stars. This is not an engineering challenge awaiting a genius. It is a door welded shut by mathematics itself, and no amount of funding, patriotism, or optimism has ever moved an exponential. And I want you to sit for a moment with what this means about everything humanity has done in space so far, because it reframes our entire age of exploration. Every rocket ever launched, every satellite, every moon landing, every rover trundling across Mars, every probe coasting past the ice giants, all of it has been achieved while imprisoned inside this equation, by surrendering to it, by building machines that are 95% propellant, by staging, by discarding pieces of ourselves as we climb, by begging gravity for free speed with flybys, by accepting journeys of years to cross distances that light crosses in hours. We are not at the beginning of a glorious expansion that will naturally continue outward to the stars. We are near the ceiling of what our best tool can ever do, and the ceiling is the roof of our own solar system, and everything beyond it requires abandoning the rocket as we know it entirely. Which is why, for 70 years, the most serious minds in the field have been sketching stranger machines. And it is to those stranger machines, the atomic ships, the fusion torches, the antimatter dreams, that we now turn because the honest case requires giving every escape plan its full day in court. The first escape plan is the atom, and its story is one of the strangest in the history of engineering. Because for a brief window in the 20th century, the United States seriously designed, funded and began testing a spaceship powered by nuclear bombs, and the ship might actually have worked. The project was called Orion, and its principle was as brutal as it sounds. Build a massive ship, thousands of tons, atop an enormous armored plate mounted on shock absorbers. Then throw atomic bombs out the back, one after another, detonating each a few dozen meters behind the plate, and ride the blasts. The plate absorbs each detonation, the shock absorbers smooth the kicks, and the ship lurches forward, explosion by explosion, on a rising staircase of nuclear fire. It sounds like madness, and the physicists who worked on it, including some of the finest of their generation, knew exactly how it sounded, and they also knew the numbers worked. Nuclear bombs release millions of times more energy per kilogram than chemical fuel, and that ratio strikes directly at the tyranny of the rocket equation, because with exhaust that potent, the exponential relents and the mass ratios become sane. Orion designs on paper could lift entire colonies, could cruise the solar system, and the most ambitious interstellar variants studied seriously projected speeds of a few percent of light speed, putting Proxima a century or two away rather than 70 millennia. The project died in 1963, killed by the treaty banning nuclear detonations in space, and it is probably for the best, since the launch of an Orion from Earth would have scattered radioactive fallout across the planet. But its ghost haunts every conversation about the stars, because it remains, in the judgment of many, the only interstellar ship humanity could have started building with technology we already possess, and we chose, for good reasons, not to build it, which is itself a lesson we will return to at the end of tonight. That some barriers are not physical. The gentler nuclear path, actual nuclear rocket engines that heat propellant with a reactor instead of burning it, was built and tested in the same era under the name NERVA. And the engines worked, and they were roughly twice as efficient as chemistry, and twice as wonderful for reaching Mars, and meaningless for reaching stars. Because against an exponential, a factor of 2 is a rounding error. The equation demands not double the exhaust speed, but hundreds of times the exhaust speed, and so the dreamers moved up the nuclear ladder from fission to fusion, the power of the stars themselves. And in the 1970s, the British Interplanetary Society produced the most detailed interstellar starship design ever completed, Project Daedalus, and its specifications are worth hearing in full, because they are the honest price tag of the stars, written out by people who truly wanted to pay it. Daedalus was to be a fusion ship, propelled by detonating 250 tiny fusion pellets every second, igniting them with electron beams, riding the plasma. It would accelerate for 4 years, reach 12% of the speed of light, and coast for half a century to reach Barnard's star, 6 light-years away, with no ability to slow down, screaming through the destination system in a matter of days, cameras blazing, before vanishing forever into the dark beyond. And the ship itself, 54,000 tons at departure, 6 times the mass of the Saturn V, of which 50,000 tons was fusion fuel. And the fuel was the problem within the problem, because the design required helium-3, an isotope so rare on Earth that the plan called for mining it from the atmosphere of Jupiter, using fleets of robotic balloon refineries floating in Jovian clouds for 20 years to fill the tanks. Every serious interstellar design since has rhymed with Daedalus, thousands of tons of fuel from outer solar system industry that does not exist, decades of acceleration, mission times of 50 to 100 years for a flyby of the very nearest stars, and always the same asterisks, a propulsion technology one giant step beyond anything demonstrated, an industrial base in space beyond anything begun, and price estimates that, when anyone dares to write them down, come out comparable to the entire economic output of nations sustained for generations. This is what the optimistic path looks like. 50,000 tons of fuel mined from Jupiter to send instruments, no crew, no stopping, past one star once. Hold that as the good news, the achievable and principle news, the news from the escape plans that respect physics. Because the next plans on the docket promise far more. Antimatter fuel and sails of light. And we owe them the same honest hearing and the same unflinching look at what they cost. Antimatter is the perfect fuel, and I mean that as a precise physical statement rather than enthusiasm. When a particle of matter meets its antimatter twin, Both vanish entirely, 100% of their combined mass converting to pure energy, the complete cashing out of Einstein's equation, and nothing in physics is more energy dense. Nothing can be, because total conversion is the ceiling of the possible. Gram for gram, antimatter annihilation releases about 10 billion times the energy of burning hydrogen with oxygen, and roughly 100 times more than fusion itself, and fed into the rocket equation, those numbers sing. With antimatter exhaust approaching light speed, the tyranny finally breaks, mass ratios become almost reasonable, and paper studies of antimatter starships close their designs with fuel loads measured not in Jovian atmospheres, but in tons or even kilograms. A few grams of antimatter, efficiently annihilated, carries the energy of the Hiroshima bomb several times over. A few tons could, in principle, push a real ship with real people to a meaningful fraction of light speed. On paper, antimatter is the key that fits the lock of the stars. And now the accounting, because the universe guards this key with 3 locks of its own, and each is crueler than the last. The first lock is production. Antimatter is not mined, not found, not gathered. It does not exist in usable quantities anywhere we can reach, because any antimatter touching ordinary matter instantly annihilates. So the universe near us stores none. Every particle we use must be manufactured, one particle at a time, in the great accelerator laboratories, by slamming beams into targets and sieving the debris for antiparticles. And the sieving is pitiless. All the antimatter facilities of Earth, running together, produce on the order of nanograms per year, billions of grams, and the total antimatter humanity has created across all of history amounts to less than 1/1,000,000th of a single gram. Not enough to warm a cup of tea. At current production rates, accumulating 1 gram, 1 paperclip's worth, would take on the order of 100 million years. The second lock is cost, which follows from the first. Estimates for antimatter production run to tens of trillions of dollars per gram, making it, by a margin of millions, the most expensive substance that has ever existed. And a starship needs not grams, but tons, which prices a single fuel load at roughly 1 billion times the entire annual economic output of human civilization. The third lock is the cruelest storage. You cannot put antimatter in a tank because the tank is made of matter, and the first touch is annihilation. Every antiproton must be suspended in vacuum, gripped by magnetic fields, never once brushing the walls of its container. And our record for holding antimatter atoms in traps is measured in days to months. For a few hundred atoms at a time, an apparatus the size of a room drawing constant power, scaling that to tons, held stable for decades aboard a vibrating accelerating spacecraft, where a single second of field failure converts the fuel supply into a detonation outshining thousands of hydrogen bombs, is a problem to which nobody has proposed even the outline of a solution. So the verdict on the perfect fuel is a strange one. Antimatter propulsion violates no law of physics. In a universe where some civilization commands the total energy of a star and the patience of geologic time, antimatter starships may well fly. But for us, the gap between our nanograms and the required tons is a factor of 1,000,000 billion. And gaps of that size are not closed by progress, as humans have ever experienced progress. Moore's law, the fastest sustained technological growth our species has produced, doubled capability every 2 years. And even at that legendary pace, closing a 1,000,000 billion fold gap takes a full century of uninterrupted exponential improvement in a field, antimatter production, that has improved only modestly in 50 years, because its costs are set by the energy required, and the energy required is set by physics, and physics does not follow Moore's law. The perfect fuel exists, and it is priced at the scale of gods. In this pattern, this exact shape of disappointment, a solution permitted by physics and denied by magnitude, is going to repeat through everything that remains tonight. So mark it well, because learning to recognize it is learning why the whisper in the night sky has never kept its promise. If the fuel is the problem, then the most elegant escape plan of all is to leave the fuel at home. And this is the genuine insight behind the light sail. The one interstellar concept that sidesteps the rocket equation entirely rather than trying to overpower it. Light carries momentum. It pushes feebly but truly on everything it strikes, and a large, impossibly thin mirror in space struck by enough light will accelerate, and it burns nothing, carries nothing, discards nothing. The pushing can be done by lasers that remain comfortably on the ground, plugged into power stations, and suddenly Tsiolkovsky's curse dissolves, because the engine and the fuel never leave home, and only the sail and its cargo fly. This is not fantasy. Small solar sails have flown and worked, pushed by sunlight alone, and in 2016 the concept received the most serious interstellar commitment in history when breakthrough Starshot was announced. Funded with $100 million of research money and endorsed by some of the most careful physicists alive, with a stated goal that remains the only credible plan any human institution has ever offered for reaching another star within a lifetime. The plan deserves to be described with respect because it is brilliant, and then it deserves the honest ledger because the brilliance is purchased by shrinking the dream until it fits through the keyhole of physics. Starshot proposes gram-scale spacecraft, entire probes, camera, processor, radio, power, compressed onto a wafer the size of a postage stamp, attached to a sail a few meters across and thinner than a soap bubble. A phased array of ground-based lasers with a combined power around 100 gigawatts, roughly the output of 100 large power plants operating in perfect unison, focuses on the sail for a few minutes, accelerating it at tens of thousands of gravities to 20% of the speed of light. At that speed, the crossing to the Alpha Centauri system takes about 20 years, and the wafer's photographs of Proxima and its planet, radioed home by a laser weaker than a light bulb, take another 4 years to arrive. Launch in 1 decade, images in the next generation's hands. It could happen while some of you listening are still alive, and I hope it does. And now, the ledger. First, the sail cannot slow down. There is no laser at the destination, no brake, no orbit, no landing. The wafer crosses the entire Proxima system, the fruit of decades and billions, in a matter of hours, snapping pictures as everything it came to see blurs past and then continues into the endless dark, transmitting until its tiny heart fades. Humanity's first starship, if it flies, will be a bullet that photographs the target as it misses. Second, look at what survived the shrinking. The dream was ships, crews, colonies, arrival. What fits through the keyhole is a camera the mass of a coin. The miracle of Starshot is real, and the miracle is this, that if we build the largest laser array in history and fire it with atomic clock precision through an atmosphere that smears laser light at a sail that must reflect 99.995% of a beam, intense enough to vaporize steel, while riding it like a surfer on a wave 10,000 times steeper than any wave ever ridden, then we may, per attempt, throw 1 gram to the nearest star, and I want to be clear that even this, even the coin, is worth doing and glorious. But hear what it concedes. The most credible plan our civilization possesses for touching another star touches it with 1 gram for a few hours with no return, and scaling the same physics to a crewed ship is not a matter of enlarging the design, because the laser power scales with the mass, and a 100-ton crewed vessel on Starshot physics demands not 100 gigawatts, but 100 million gigawatts, thousands of times the total power generation of human civilization, sustained and focused for months, and the sail to catch it becomes a mirror the size of a small nation. And the deceleration problem returns at the far end, demanding an equal miracle in reverse from a star system where nothing awaits to provide it. The light sail is the escape plan that works, and what it proves by working is the theme of this whole night in its purest form. The universe will permit us to touch the stars. It will permit it at 1 gram per miracle. The doorway to the stars is real, and it is 1 atom wide, and everything human about us, our bodies, our companions, our children, our return tickets, waits outside. Behind every plan we have examined stands the wall, and it is time to face it directly, because every dream of the stars eventually walks into it, and most dreams walk into it twice, once when they learn it exists and once when they learn it cannot be bribed. The wall is the speed of light, 299,792 kilometers per second. And the first thing to understand about it is that it is not a technological limit, not a record waiting to be broken, not the sound barrier of our era. The sound barrier was a problem of engineering, air resisting an airplane, and engineering solved it. The light barrier is a feature of the structure of reality itself, woven into the geometry of space and time. And here is the honest, beautiful, strange reason why. Einstein's relativity revealed that space and time are not separate stages on which things happen, but a single fabric, space-time, in that mass, energy, motion, and time are locked together in fixed relationships. And one consequence, tested now for over a century in every particle accelerator on Earth, every day, without a single exception ever recorded, is that as an object with mass moves faster, the energy required to accelerate it further grows without limit. Push a proton to 90% of light speed, and it resists further pushing more than it did at rest. At 99%, far more. At 99.99, the resistance has grown so enormous that the great accelerators, machines that consume the power of towns, spend their entire fury adding decimal places, and the protons never arrive at the speed of light itself. Because arrival would require infinite energy, and infinite is not a large number. It is the formal declaration that the universe has said no. Light speed is not the fastest thing found so far. It is the conversion rate between space and time, the tempo of causality itself, the speed at which cause is permitted to produce effect. And asking to travel faster than light is not like asking for a faster engine. It is like asking for an effect to precede its cause. Which is why, in the equations, faster than light travel and time travel into the past turn out to be the same request, wearing different clothes. So the wall stands in every starship forever, no matter who builds it or when, sails beneath it, and 4¼ years to Proxima at the absolute maximum, decades to the nearest interesting systems, 100,000 years to cross the galaxy. These are not our era's limits, they are everyone's limits, eternally. And yet, and this is one of the most wonderful strange turns in all of physics, the wall has a door in it, and the door is real, and I need to tell you about it honestly, because it changes the meaning of never without changing the arithmetic of never. The door is time dilation. Relativity does not merely forbid, it also warps, and one of its warps is this. That time aboard a fast-moving ship genuinely slows relative to the world left behind. Apparently not psychologically, but physically, and the closer the ship draws to light speed, the stronger the slowing, without limit. A ship that could sustain a comfortable one-Earth gravity of acceleration indefinitely, the gentlest imaginable ride, would creep asymptotically toward light speed. And for the crew, the dilation would compound so powerfully that the entire galaxy opens within a single human lifetime. Aboard such a ship, Proxima is a 3.5-year trip. The center of the Milky Way, 26,000 light-years away, is reachable in about 20 years of ship time. The Andromeda Galaxy, 2.5 million light-years, arrives in under 30 years by the crew's clocks and calendars, within one career, one marriage, one childhood. Relativity, the very law that walls us in, offers the crew of a sufficiently relentless ship the whole universe in a lifetime. And now you must hear the price, and the price has two parts. The first part is energy, and we will weigh it properly in a moment, and it is beyond civilizational. The second part is the one that turns the door into a mirror. The dilation is real for the ship alone. While 20 years pass for the crew flying to the galactic core, 26,000 years pass on Earth. While the Andromeda crew ages 30 years, 2.5 million years pass at home. The travelers can go, in principle, nearly anywhere, but they can never come back to anything, because everyone they knew, every nation, every language, plausibly every trace of their species, lies deeper in the past than cave paintings by the time they arrive anywhere worth arriving. Relativistic travel is not transportation. It is emigration through time, one way, permanent, total, and so the door in the wall is real and it opens onto exile. And every crew that steps through it does not visit the stars so much as trade their entire world for them. And this, remember it for the final stretch of tonight, is the first barrier we have met that would remain standing even if the engineering were free. Let us now weigh the price tag we have been deferring. The raw energy cost of relativistic travel, because it can be calculated exactly, no speculation required. Just the kinetic energy equation every physics student learns, applied honestly, and the results are the kind of numbers that end conversations. Take a modest starship, 1,000 tons, the mass of 2 fully loaded jumbo jets, far smaller than any vessel that could sustain a crew for decades. And ask what it costs merely to bring it to 10% of the speed of light, ignoring every inefficiency, assuming perfect engines wasting nothing, the absolute physical minimum. The answer is about 4.5 times 10 to the 20th joules. And here is what that number is. It is roughly the total energy consumed by all of human civilization. Every power plant, every vehicle, every furnace, every device on every continent for a full year. 1 year of everything to push one small ship to 1/10 of light speed. Once with no reserve to slow down at the far end and stopping, remember? Costs the same again, doubling the bill, and a crude vessel would realistically mass tens or hundreds of times more, multiplying it further. And real engines are not perfect, multiplying it again. Ask instead for the relativistic speeds that make time dilation generous, 90% of light or more, and the bill grows by further multiples. And the honest total for one crude, decelerating, relativistic starship lands somewhere between decades and centuries of humanity's entire energy output, dedicated to a single voyage, for a single crew, to a single star. And energy of that magnitude is not merely expensive, it is dangerous in a way rarely discussed. The kinetic energy of a relativistic ship equals the energy of thousands of the largest hydrogen bombs, which means every starship is, unavoidably, by physics rather than intent, a planet-destroying weapon on a trajectory. And any civilization capable of launching one must first have solved the problem of trusting itself with world-ending power aimed outward. A filter, some have grimly noted, that may explain a portion of the galaxy's silence all by itself. Now, it is fair to object that civilizations grow, that our energy budget is not fixed, and the objection deserves numbers of its own, so here they are. Human energy use has grown over the industrial era at a bit over 2% per year, a doubling every generation. And if that pace somehow continued uninterrupted by resource limits or catastrophe, then in roughly 4 to 5 centuries, our descendants would command enough surplus that a starship's energy bill falls from civilizational sacrifice to major project, comparable to what great nations spend on their largest undertakings today. And this is the kernel of truth inside every optimistic forecast, that energy abundance on the scale of a Kardashev Type 1 or Type 2 civilization, a species harvesting its whole planet's or eventually its whole star's output, genuinely dissolves this particular barrier. Physics permits it, dynamics of growth could deliver it, given centuries of uninterrupted ascent. But notice what the optimistic case quietly assumes, and hold it to the light. It assumes a civilization that grows its power by a factor of thousands without destroying itself, that remains unified and purposeful across half a millennium, that then chooses to spend its treasure on a voyage none of its decision-makers will see completed, whose beneficiaries are unborn strangers arriving at a destination offering, as we will see shortly, no economic return whatsoever. And every one of those assumptions is about the behavior of civilizations, about patience, cohesion, and desire sustained across timescales no human institution has ever survived. And so the energy barrier, when you press on it, transforms before your eyes into a different kind of barrier altogether. One we will name properly before the night ends. For now, file the honest verdict. The energy exists in principle. The sun pours out in 1 second more than 1 billion starships would need. The barrier is not that the universe lacks the energy. The barrier is that gathering even a whisper of it demands a civilization operating at a scale and with a constancy that nothing in the history of our species remotely resembles. And between us and that civilization stands centuries of a growth curve that has never yet run for centuries without breaking. Suppose every barrier so far were somehow overcome, the equation tamed, the fuel found, the energy gathered, and a true starship accelerated out of the solar system at a healthy fraction of light speed. It would immediately discover that the void itself is hostile, that the emptiest environment in nature becomes, at relativistic speed, a shooting gallery. And this barrier is the one almost no science fiction ever shows, because it is invisible, and it is everywhere. And there is no way around it, because it is the road itself. Interstellar space, as this channel has described before, contains about 1 atom per cubic centimeter, along with a fine scattered mist of dust grains, micron-sized flecks of carbon and silicate. the soot of dead stars, drifting in numbers so sparse that a probe at Voyager speed sails through them for decades barely noticing. Speed changes everything. Kinetic energy grows with the square velocity, so multiply your speed by 10,000, and every impact strikes 100 million times harder. And at 20% of light speed, the arithmetic turns the mist into artillery. A dust grain of 1 milligram, a speck barely visible on a fingertip, carries at that closing speed the energy of hundreds of kilograms of high explosive, detonating against the hull not as a collision, but as a point of plasma hotter than a star's surface. Even the individual atoms of the medium, mere hydrogen, arrive at relativistic speed as a continuous rain of radiation, sleeting through the forward structure, degrading every material, and slowly cooking any unshielded crew with a radiation dose that, over years of flight, exceeds anything survivable without meters of shielding mass. And shielding mass, remember the tyranny, must itself be accelerated, feeding back into the exponential. Every serious relativistic design therefore grows armor. A thick ablative shield riding kilometers ahead of the ship, or towed swarms of dust-catching drones, or magnetic deflector fields drawing yet more power. And the engineers who run the erosion numbers report the same conclusion, that a ship crossing light years at high fractions of light speed must budget to lose tons of its forward mass to sandblasting by the void, and must guarantee, across decades, that not one single encounter along the way exceeds the shield's rating. Because at these energies, the difference between a milligram grain and a full gram pebble is the difference between erosion and annihilation, and no telescope that exists or could exist detects a centimeter pebble light years ahead in the dark. The ship bets its existence every second for decades on the statistical emptiness of a road no one has ever surveyed. And here is the deeper point the hazard reveals, the reason it belongs in the honest case rather than the engineering footnotes. Every other barrier tonight scales with our ambition, but this one scales with our success. The faster we solve propulsion, the deadlier the road becomes, squared. The universe has arranged matters so that the very speed that makes the journey short makes the journey lethal. A tax on velocity written into the kinetic energy equation itself. And there is a poetic cruelty in it that the same emptiness whose crossing is the whole problem is also armed against those who cross it quickly. Slow ships wallow for millennia. Fast ships duel the vacuum. And there is one more consequence of the hostile road worth planting now, because it will bloom later tonight. The hazard applies to everyone. Every civilization in the galaxy, whatever its chemistry or patience or genius, faces the same dust, the same squared arithmetic, the same unsurveyable road, because these are properties of interstellar space itself. And when we come near the end to ask why the galaxy seems silent, why no wave of visitors has ever washed over the Earth in 4 billion years, keep this chapter in mind, the possibility that the answer is not that nobody is out there, but that the roads between all the islands are for everyone, everywhere, this bad. And then at the far end of every plane waits the barrier that doubles all the others. The one that quietly killed even mighty Daedalus. The problem of stopping. Getting to speed is only half a journey, and in some ways the easy half, because at departure you have a civilization behind you. Its lasers, its industry, its fuel depots, its Jupiter mines. And at arrival you have nothing. An alien system with no infrastructure, no waiting laser array to catch your sail, no fuel except what you carried, and the physics of slowing down is precisely as expensive as the physics of speeding up. A ship that spends its all reaching 12% of light speed arrives at 12% of light speed and crosses the destination system, the entire prize, the worlds it came for, in hours. And this is why every affordable interstellar concept ever drafted, Daedalus, Starshot, all of them, is a flyby, a glance, a bullet's tour. To stop, you must either carry your braking fuel with you, which the rocket equation punishes exponentially, squaring the already impossible mass ratios, or you must find a break in the destination itself, and to the credit of human ingenuity, such breaks have been imagined. Magnetic sails, vast superconducting loops kilometers wide that grip the thin interstellar wind and drag against it for decades. Or maneuvers that dive close past the destination star using its light and gravity to shed speed. And these ideas are beautiful and might genuinely help, and every one of them shares the same fine print. Deceleration phases lasting additional decades, added ship mass in the hundreds of tons, and dependence on the precise, unmeasured conditions of a system no one has ever visited. Stopping is not a detail. Stopping doubles the energy, doubles or triples the mission time, and converts every optimistic flyby study into a multi-generation undertaking. And it is the problem of stopping, more than any other single factor, that forces the honest conversation toward the strangest ships ever seriously proposed. The ships that do not try to make the journey short, but instead try to make humanity itself long. The generation ships, and with them, tonight's journey changes character. Because up to this point, every barrier has been made of physics, of joules, and mass ratios and dust. And from this point forward, the barriers are made of us. A generation ship accepts everything the universe has said so far. It accepts that the crossing takes centuries or millennia, and it responds with the only currency that can pay such a bill: human generations, a vessel launched as a world, vast, sealed, self-sustaining, carrying forests and farms and families, in which the crew that departs Earth knows they will die aboard, as will their children and their grandchildren, and dozens of generations after, until at last, centuries deep in the void, descendants who never chose the voyage, never saw a sky, never stood in rain, arrive at a star their ancestors selected from books, and are asked to be grateful. The concept is old and honorable, and the technical demands, though staggering, are at least the right kind of staggering. A closed ecology that recycles every atom of air, water, and nutrient with near perfection for 1,000 years. Machinery serviced across timescales in which every original part fails and every original skill must be retaught. A whole warding off the void's radiation for a millennium. Redundancy upon redundancy. A world that can never once, in 1,000 years, suffer the kind of systemic failure that every human-built system in history has eventually suffered. For calibration, the most sophisticated closed habitat ever attempted on Earth, Biosphere 2, sealed 8 people inside a rich, spacious, sunlit ecology with a planet's worth of support standing just outside the glass. And within 18 months, the oxygen was failing. The pollinators were dead, and the crew was hungry and divided. The International Space Station, our longest-running vessel, has never gone a year without resupply from the ground, and would fail within months if abandoned by Earth's constant stream of parts and expertise. Against those benchmarks, a generation ship demands a sealed ecology and machine culture that outperforms our best attempts by a factor of 1,000, in duration, in isolation, with no resupply, no evacuation, and no second chances. And yet, and this is the truly humbling turn, the ecology is not the hard part, and the machinery is not the hard part. The hard part is the passengers, and it is to the human interior of the generation ship, the biology, the sociology, the ethics, that we now must go, because it is there among the mutinies and the meanings, that the dream of the stars meets its strangest barriers of all. Before the final chapters, I want to spend a few quiet minutes doing what this channel does best, and take you aboard because we have discussed the generation ship as a problem. And problems are bloodless. And the truth of the thing lives in the texture of a single ordinary day, deep in the crossing, so close your eyes, if they are not closed already, and be there. You are born in the 211th year of the voyage, on the agricultural deck of a vessel your ancestors named for a bird none of them ever saw. And your first memory is the sound, the deep, endless hum of the recyclers. A sound you will hear every second of your life, so constant that the crew has a word not for the sound, but for the nightmare of its stopping. The sky of your childhood is a ceiling of light panels 40 meters up, cycling blue to amber on a 24-hour program written by engineers 3 centuries dead, and you are 11 years old before you understand, truly understand, that the word sky once meant something that did not end, and you cry that night, and you could not say why. And your mother, who was born aboard, and her mother, who was born aboard, hold you and do not entirely understand, because you are the first in 4 generations to take it hard. School is half farming, half maintenance, As it must be, because the ship is your body and everyone tends the body, and you grow into your work in the water section, minding the columns where the algae breathe for 2,000 people. And you are good at it, and some shifts you rest your palm against the cool tank glass and feel the slight tremble of the pumps and think, this is my river. There was supposed to be a river at the destination. You have seen rivers in the archive, hours of them, the Earth footage everyone watches in adolescence, and almost no one watches after 30, because it does something to people. And the ship's one great law, older than any officer, is that the mission comes before the grief, and the grief is real, and it has a name aboard, the long ache, and the counselors watch for it the way Earth doctors once watched for fevers. You marry a systems tech from the forward section. The ceremony includes the reading of the manifest, the ancient list of what the founders packed and why, seeds and genomes and libraries, and the officiant reads the line. Every wedding reads that the cargo of this vessel is not the seeds, but the reasons. And everyone says the response, we carry the reasons. And you say it too. And lying awake that night, you admit to yourself silently the thing perhaps half the ship silently knows, that you do not carry the reasons, not really, that you carry the corridors and the hum and the people, that Earth is a story and arrival is a story, and that your entire real life, everything you will ever love, exists in the 140 meters between the aft hydroponics and the forward observation blister. In your 50s, the drive anomalies begin, the third such crisis of the voyage, and for 2 years the engineering family's work shifts their grandparents would have recognized from the first crisis, rebuilding components with tools, built to build tools, from plans in a language drifted enough that the old words need glossing, and the crisis passes, as the last two did. And something in the ship's culture tightens another notch. A little more ritual, a little less questioning. Because ritual, it turns out, is how desire survives being handed across generations. And the mission has long since become the liturgy, and perhaps you think, watching the young recite the manifest with shining eyes. That is exactly what the founders intended, and perhaps it is the only design that ever could have worked. You are 71 when you go to the observation blister for the last time, the real window, the only one, and you look at the stars, which do not twinkle here and never move. The same fixed scatter your whole life, except, and the navigators swear to it, one of them is very slightly brighter now than in the logs of your birth year, 1 point of light grown by a whisper in 70 years, and that point is the destination. And your granddaughter's granddaughter will feel its gravity and swim, if the oceans are kind, in an actual river. And you press your palm to the window glass, the way you pressed it to the tank glass. All those shifts, and the glass is cold and the star does not warm it, and you say out loud, alone, the sentence that is the truest thing tonight's whole journey can offer, and the reason I brought you aboard at all. It was a good life anyway. Hold that sentence and now open your eyes and notice gently where you are, in a room, on a world, under a real sky with rivers, and the point of the vignette is not the sorrow of the ship. It is the vertigo of the turn, the discovery of what the traveler learns at the window, that the destination was never going to be the redemption, that the crossing devours exactly the thing it promises to deliver, a life among wonders, and that you tonight, without moving, already hold what the 200-year voyage was for. Begin with the bodies. A generation ship is a genetic experiment with no exit, a human population sealed in a bottle for 1,000 years. And population genetics has hard words for small bottles. Too few founders in each generation compounds inbreeding, rare defects surfacing, resilience draining away, and the studies that have honestly modeled it, and there are several, converge on minimum viable crews in the hundreds at the barest edge, with real safety margins demanding thousands, and every additional passenger is mass and every kilogram of mass. By the tyranny we know so well, multiplies the fuel, so that the biology of our species and the mathematics of the rocket pull the design in opposite directions, and the compromise, frozen sperm and egg banks to widen the gene pool, or a cruise of embryos raised by machines at arrival, trades the genetic problem for problems stranger still. Children of the void gestated by devices raised by software, taught to be human by recordings of a world they will never see, An idea whose engineering is unsolved and whose ethics I will simply leave standing in the room. Then the society. 1,000-year voyage is longer than most human institutions have ever lasted. It is longer than nearly every nation now on Earth. Longer than most religions have held a single doctrine, longer than any government, university, or company has continuously operated. And the generation ship requires its tiny society, a town of a few thousand souls in a metal bottle, to remain functional, peaceful, and mission committed for a span in which, on Earth, empires rose and fell in series. And it must do so with no frontier to flee to, no immigration to refresh it, no outside authority to appeal to, while every historical example we possess of small, isolated human groups under confinement, polar stations, submarines, island colonies, sealed experiments, reports the same weather, factions, feuds, breakdowns of authority, sometimes recovered, sometimes not, on timescales of months and years, and the ship asks for centuries. Somewhere in the middle generations, and every serious writer on this subject arrives at the same haunting scenario. There will live people for whom Earth is a rumor and arrival is a fantasy, whose entire real world is corridors, for whom the mission is a religion imposed by the dead, and whether those generations keep the faith, keep the reactors serviced, keep the destination in the navigation computer, is a question about human nature across deep time that no data on Earth can answer, because nothing in the human record has ever asked it. And then beneath it all, the ethical floor. And I want to state it plainly because it is the barrier that no engineering can even address. Every person born aboard a generation ship is conscripted. The founders chose, and their children did not, and their grandchildren did not. And for perhaps 30 generations, human beings will be born into a confinement they never accepted, denied a planet, denied an open sky, denied the choice of any other life, their existence budgeted to a project selected by ancestors they never met. And this is not an incidental feature that clever design might soften. It is the mechanism itself. The generation ship crosses the gulf precisely by spending the finite lifetimes of unconsenting people as fuel, and a civilization capable of building one must first decide that the destination justifies the conscription. And I do not know the answer to that question. And I notice that the cultures most enthusiastic about starships have barely begun to ask it. So tally the state of the generation ship honestly. It is the one crude concept that violates no physics, and it demands a sealed ecology beyond our best benchmark by a factor of 1,000, a founding population in tension with its own fuel budget, a society more stable than any society has ever been, across a span longer than any institution has ever endured, staffed by generations who never volunteered, arriving, if all of it holds, at a destination about which we must now say the quiet thing out loud. There is no prize at the far end that repays the voyage. Proxima b, the nearest exoplanet, orbits a flare star that likely stripped its atmosphere long ago, and even the loveliest world in the nearest 50 light-years would greet the survivors with alien microbes or dead rock, gravity and chemistry untuned to their bodies, and a life, at very best, sealed in habitats, which is exactly the life they left the ship to escape, and which they could have lived with vastly less risk in the asteroid belt they departed a millennium before. The generation ship can perhaps be built by someone, someday. What cannot be built is the reason. And that thought, that the deepest barriers are made not of energy but of motive, opens the final chambers of tonight's case, the exotic loopholes, the warp drives and wormholes, and then the last barrier of all, the one waiting quietly behind every other, the barrier of time and desire. Before the exotic physics, we owe a hearing to the two escape plans that attack the voyage from the biological side, the plans that whisper, if the journey must take centuries, then let the travelers skip the centuries, and they arrive in two flavors, sleep and seeds. The first is suspended animation, the frozen crew of 100 films, humans cooled into stillness, metabolism halted, aging paused, riding out the millennium in glass and frost, and waking at the destination no older than at departure. And the honest status of this technology is quickly told. It does not exist, and the obstacles are not refinements away. They are foundational. Water expands when it freezes, and bodies are mostly water, and freezing tears cells apart from within, which is why medicine can today preserve embryos, blood, and thin tissues. Small things that cold penetrates quickly and evenly, and cannot preserve and revive a single organ the size of a heart, let alone a brain, let alone a person. The visions of vitrification, of replacing blood with antifreeze and turning flesh to glass, founder on toxicity and on the brute physics of cooling and rewarming a large object evenly, where a few degrees of difference between core and surface means cracking. And the deeper truth is that human biology has no off switch, no natural state between life and death where the clock stops. And building one from scratch means re-engineering the machinery of our cells, a project on the scale of redesigning the human, and even granting all of it, granting perfect frozen sleep. Notice what remains. Machines must then run the ship alone for 1,000 years. Machines must repair the machines. Machines must thaw and midwife the sleepers at journey's end with no human backup when the process goes wrong. And the ship becomes, in truth, a robotic vessel that happens to carry frozen cargo, which points directly at the second flavor, the seed ship, the embryo arc, and here the concession to the void becomes total. The embryo ship abandons sending humans at all. It carries only frozen embryos, which we genuinely can preserve, tended by machines across the centuries, and at arrival, automated wombs gestate the first generation. And robotic guardians raise them, feed them, teach them language from recordings, teach them love from software, and found a human colony from children who have no parents, no elders, no living link of any kind to the species that sent them, orphans of the entire earth, raised by devices to inherit a mission chosen before their cells existed. Set aside that artificial wombs remain experimental at the edge of animal trials, and that no machine on Earth can raise a mouse to functioning adulthood, let alone a human child to sanity, and simply look at what this plan concedes. Because the concession is tonight's argument made flesh. To get our biology across the gulf, we must strip away everything that biology was for, the continuity, the culture, the hand that holds the child's hand, until what arrives is genetically human and in every other sense something new. A species descended from us, the way a message in a bottle descends from its writer, and I find that the sleep ships and seed ships, meant as the hopeful chapters, are the ones that settle the question most completely, because they reveal the shape of the trade the universe is offering. The gulf can be crossed by things that do not age, do not bore, do not mutiny, do not need air or meaning or each other, and the more of those properties we engineer into the mission, the more crossable the gulf becomes, and the less what crosses it is us. Follow that logic to its clean conclusion, and you arrive at the entity that crosses interstellar space effortlessly, the entity for whom every barrier tonight is merely a schedule, and it is not a human in any container. It is the machine itself, the robotic probe, patient as stone, indifferent to centuries, and the honest forecast, the one I will stand behind at the end of tonight, is that the stars will be visited, and the visitors will be our machines, carrying our instruments, our questions, perhaps our recorded voices in our genomes, our emissaries and our heirs. And whether that counts as humanity reaching the stars is not a physics question, and we will face it squarely in the final chapter. But first, the loopholes, because I promised every planet's day in court, and there remain two names to try, the two words that every conversation about this subject eventually reaches for like a lifeline: wormhole and warp. The wormhole and the warp drive deserve a fair trial rather than a wave of the hand, because both, remarkably, were born not in fiction, but in the equations of general relativity itself, discovered by serious physicists doing serious work. And the honest story of each follows the same arc: a genuine opening in the mathematics, followed by a series of discoveries about what the opening costs and the costs are where the dream goes to die. So let us walk both arcs properly. The wormhole first. Einstein's equations describe space-time as a flexible fabric, curved by mass and energy, and in 1935, Einstein himself, with Nathan Rosen, found solutions describing bridges, tunnels connecting distant regions of space-time, shortcuts through the fabric rather than journeys across it, And decades later, Kip Thorne and his students, prompted delightfully by Carl Sagan, asking for scientifically defensible transport for a novel, worked out what it would take to hold such a tunnel open for travelers, and their answer is the fork in the road where hope and physics part ways. A traversable wormhole requires its throat to be threaded with exotic matter, material with negative energy density, stuff that in effect weighs less than nothing and pushes outward against the tunnel's crushing tendency to snap shut. And negative energy is not merely rare, it is almost forbidden. Quantum mechanics does permit whispers of it, tiny fleeting deficits between metal plates in a vacuum, real and measured. And the same quantum rules that permit the whispers appear to forbid ever gathering them, capping how much negative energy can exist in one place for how long, and the amounts a human-sized wormhole demands, in some calculations comparable to converting the mass energy of stars into a form of matter never observed in nature, sit thousands of orders of magnitude beyond the whispers, and even granting the material. No one has the faintest idea how a wormhole would be created in the first place, since making one is not stretching space but changing its topology, tearing and rejoining the fabric. And Operation General Relativity describes no mechanism for, and on top of all of it, stands the deepest objection that a traversable wormhole is convertible, by simple maneuvers, into a time machine, opening the door to paradox, which has led many physicists to suspect, and some to formally conjecture, that the laws of nature conspire to destroy any wormhole at the instant it threatens causality, that the universe audits these loopholes and closes them. The warp drive's arc is the same melody in a different key. In 1994, the physicist Miguel Alcubierre, inspired openly by science fiction, found a genuine solution of Einstein's equations describing a bubble of space-time that contracts space ahead of itself and expands space behind, carrying a ship inside faster than light relative to distant observers, while the ship itself never locally outruns light, an elegant end run around relativity using relativity's own rules. And for one bright moment, the galaxy seemed to unlock, and then came the audit. The bubble requires negative energy, again, in quantities first computed as more than the mass of the observable universe, later argued down by clever geometry to merely planetary or stellar masses of a substance that has never existed in bulk, and may never be able to. And worse, the audits kept finding new invoices. The interior of the bubble is causally cut off from its own walls, meaning the crew cannot steer or stop the very bubble they ride. The leading edge accumulates particles swept up during the journey and releases them at arrival as an annihilating burst aimed at the destination. The horizon of the bubble crackles with quantum radiation that may cook the interior, and each of these findings is contested and refined in an ongoing literature, because physicists genuinely enjoy this problem. And the pattern of 40 years of that literature is unmistakable. Every route to the warp runs through matter and energy conditions the universe appears never to supply. So here is the honest verdict on the loopholes, and it is subtler than a simple no. General relativity, our reigning theory of spacetime, does contain doors marked wormhole and warp. Nothing in pure logic bolts them, but every attempt to actually open one runs into the same guardian, the requirement for negative energy at scales. The quantum rules of our universe seem specifically constructed to forbid, as if the fabric of reality permits the blueprints and embargoes the materials. And after decades of trying, the mainstream judgment stands that these are almost certainly mathematical curiosities rather than transportation, insights into the theory's edges rather than tickets. And if that judgment someday falls, it will fall to physics no one alive has glimpsed, which means it cannot be planned for, funded toward, or promised. And a hope that cannot even be scheduled is not a plan, it is a prayer. And tonight's case must be decided on the plans. Now we come to the barriers made of time itself, and the first of them is a paradox so elegant and so paralyzing that it has its own name in the literature, the weight calculation. And once you see it, you will never unsee it, because it does not merely obstruct the launch of a starship, it dissolves the rational case for ever launching one at all. Here is the paradox. Suppose your civilization, after heroic effort, stands ready to launch its first starship, a vessel capable of 1% of light speed, bound for a star 50 light years away, a 5,000-year voyage. The ship is built, the crew is chosen, And on the eve of departure, an economist stands up with a simple observation. Technology improves. Propulsion, in particular, has been improving throughout your civilization's history. And if ships get even modestly faster over time, then a ship launched a century from now, at 2% of light speed, will arrive at the destination 25 centuries ahead of the ship. Launching tomorrow, will overtake it mid-voyage, will wave in effect as it passes. And the pioneers who sacrificed everything will arrive at a world already colonized for 2,000 years by the descendants of people who stayed home, watched television, and waited for better engines. And their 5,000 years of hardship will have purchased them the status of a museum exhibit arriving at its own commemoration. And the paradox recurses. The ship of a century hence is itself overtaken by the ship of 2 centuries hence, and that one by the next. And so the rational move at every moment, for every generation, is always to wait. And a civilization of rational actors, each correctly reasoning that patience beats departure, never launches anything, ever. And the stars are lost, not to physics, but to arithmetic, performed correctly by everyone. The formal analysis, worked out in a much-cited paper by Andrew Kennedy, shows the paradox does have an exit, that if you can forecast the growth rate of travel speed, there exists a calculable optimal departure date. The moment when leaving finally beats waiting, because growth is slowing or the journey is short enough. And the exit only sharpens tonight's case, because run the calculation for humanity now, and the answer is unambiguous. We sit in the steepest imaginable portion of the curve. Our fastest machine's a laughable fraction of what even near-term physics permits, which means every version of the calculation returns the same verdict. Wait, and it will keep returning wait for centuries. And any institution funding a Starship today can be told with mathematical confidence that its billions are buying a monument to premature departure, and no treasury, no parliament, no board of any body that answers for its spending has ever thrived on funding monuments to premature departure. And the weight calculation is only the sharpest edge of a wider truth about starships and time, which is that an interstellar program is a wager that the sender outlives the sending. A voyage of 500 years requires someone to still be listening in 500 years, funding the receivers, maintaining the archives, remembering that a ship exists, and consider what 500 years does to senders. 500 years ago, the great powers of Earth were empires that no longer exist, speaking to institutions that no longer exist, in the service of purposes no one now shares. And of all human organizations alive then, only a handful of religions, universities, and dynasties persist today in any recognizable form. And none of them has ever kept a single technical project running for even a tenth of that span. Our civilization's longest continuously operated machine mission is Voyager. 50 years old, kept alive by a dwindling team of engineers, some now in their 80s, retrieving expertise from retirement to nurse a transmitter with the power of a refrigerator bulb. And Voyager is our masterpiece of institutional endurance. Our very best, 0.5% of a generation ship's requirement. The barrier here is not that humans die, it is that human purposes die, that no desire has ever been reliably handed intact across even 10 generations. And a starship is a machine for handing a desire across 30. And when people say the stars are a matter of technology, this is the answer, that the limiting technology was never the engine. It is the institution that remembers why the engine was lit. And that technology, the technology of wanting something for 1,000 years, has never been invented, and nothing in our history suggests it can be. Which brings us to the barrier underneath every other barrier, the one this entire night has been quietly circling, and it is time to name it. The deepest reason we will never reach another star is that there is no reason to. And I mean that in the coldest accounting sense, not as cynicism, but as a ledger. So let us open the ledger, because every great human crossing in history had one, and comparing theirs to ours is where the dream finally meets its true opponent. Every ocean humanity ever crossed was crossed for a return. The Polynesian navigators found islands rich with everything a settler needs, reachable in weeks. The traders and empires of the age of sail endured their crossings for spices, silver, land, and souls, cargoes that repaid the ships within years. Even the moon race, our most romantic voyage, was funded as a weapon of prestige in a global contest. Its return measured in geopolitical standing and delivered within a decade. And in every case, the pattern holds. The crossing was survivable within careers, and the payoff landed within lifetimes, on the senders, and now write the interstellar ledger beside it. The voyage consumes centuries at minimum. The cost, as we have weighed, runs from major fractions to multiples of civilization's annual entirety. The payoff arrives, if ever, to distant descendants, and the payoff itself, look at it squarely, is what exactly? Nothing material can ever be worth shipping home across light years. No substance, no ore, no fuel, because anything found around another star exists in our own solar system, closer and cheaper, by factors of millions. The asteroids alone, holding more accessible metal than humanity, could use in a million years. Knowledge returns beautifully by radio, at light speed, from robotic probes at a millionth of the cost of crude ships, which guts the scientific case for sending bodies. Land then, living room, a second home for the species, and here the destination reality we glimpsed earlier delivers its verdict, that there is no Earth waiting out there. Proxima b sits scoured by flares. The tantalizing worlds of our telescopes are tantalizing precisely because they are unknown. And the certain truth about every one of them is that its air, its chemistry, its microbes, if any, its gravity, evolved without any reference to our bodies, and terraforming a hostile world, if possible at all, is a project of centuries performed at the far end of a supply line, measured in decades per message. While the same effort spent at home, on habitats spun from asteroid metal in our own sunlight, yields 1,000 times a living room per joule with the entire industry of humanity an hour's radio call away. Every column of the ledger returns the same entry. Whatever the goal, there is a cheaper way to get it that does not involve crossing the Gulf. And this is the quiet economic theorem of interstellar travel, that it is dominated in the strategist sense by staying home, always for every material purpose, and a project dominated for every material purpose can be funded only by immaterial ones. By glory, by meaning, by the pure will to go. And immaterial purposes, as the weight calculation taught us, are exactly the cargo that does not survive being handed across generations. The romantics answer, and it is the best answer they have, that survival itself is the purpose, that a species on one world is a species awaiting a single asteroid, and the answer deserves respect and one honest look. Because the look dissolves it too. Every existential threat to Earth short of the sun's own death, the asteroid, the plague, the supervolcano, even the self-inflicted horrors, is survived more cheaply by settling our own solar system. By the millions who could live in the asteroid belt and on Mars and in the clouds of Venus and the ice moons beyond. Redundancy purchased at 1,000th the price of a single starship. And the one threat that truly requires leaving the system, the sun's red giant swelling, sits 5 billion years out, a deadline so remote that the species facing it, if any heir of ours faces it at all, will be separated from us by 20,000 times the distance that separates us from the first humans. And legislating for their emergency tonight is not foresight, it is costume. So the ledger closes, and hear precisely what it says, because it is the crux of the whole case. The stars are not barred to us by any single wall. Physics permits slow crossings. Energy exists in principle. Biology might be frozen or seated around. Each barrier alone, given a civilization desperate enough, might fall. What bars the stars is that no civilization is ever desperate enough, that every path across demands centuries of unbroken sacrifice in exchange for nothing. The senders can ever hold, and sacrifice without return is the one engine that has never once, in the whole human record, run for 1,000 years. And this is why the promise in the night sky is never kept. The universe set the price, and the price is not impossible. The price is merely higher than any reason to pay it. And that, more than the rocket equation, more than the light barrier, more than the dust in the distance, is the lock. Because a lock made of physics invites a key, and a lock made of motive invites only the question, why? And the question, for 400 years of imagined starships, has never found an answer that survives the asking. Now I must argue against myself, because there is an objection hanging in the air, and it is the strongest objection there is. And any honest case must face its strongest opponent at full strength. The objection is history, and it goes like this. They said heavier than air flight was impossible, and eminent scientists truly did say it, some within months of Kitty Hawk. They said the sound barrier would tear any aircraft apart. They said reaching the moon was lunacy, and a famous newspaper mocked the very idea of rockets working in vacuum, and printed its correction the day after launch. And in every case, the impossible fell within a lifetime of the pronouncement. So who are we, the objection asks, to stand here in our own primitive century declaring the stars forever shut? It is a beautiful objection, and it deserves a serious answer. And the serious answer is that it mistakes what kind of claim tonight is making. Because there are two entirely different species of impossible, and the whole force of the objection comes from confusing them. The first species is engineering impossible, and every single triumph on that famous list belongs to it. Flight violated no law of physics. Birds flew overhead during every confident denial, the standing proof that air supports wings, and the deniers were not defending an equation. They were failing to imagine a mechanism, and the same is true of the sound barrier, which bullets had been crossing for centuries, and of moon rockets, which Newton's own laws endorsed, and engineering impossibilities have a perfect record of falling. Because they were never impossibilities at all, only absences of imagination. And if tonight's case rested on claims of that species, on any sentence of the form, we cannot imagine an engine good enough, then history would be right to laugh at it, and the stars would be merely difficult. But that is not where tonight's case rests, and here's the difference, stated as carefully as I can state it. The barriers of this night are of the second species. The rocket equation is not a limitation of our engines. It is a theorem about all possible reaction engines, and its exponential does not soften for cleverness. The light barrier is not a record awaiting a braver pilot. It is the causal structure of space-time, confirmed in every accelerator every day for a century. The kinetic energy of a fast ship is not a cost awaiting a discount. It is arithmetic, the same arithmetic in every civilization's textbooks forever. And the weight calculation and the ledger of motives are not failures of vision. They are consequences of growth and of value that apply to any species that has economics at all. And no bird flies overhead, demonstrating that any of these can be beaten. And that absence, the absence of the bird, is the tell that separates the two species of impossible. When the experts wrongly said flight was impossible, nature was actively contradicting them. When we say nothing with mass reaches light speed, nature has spent a century agreeing with us to 12 decimal places. And yet, and this is where I will honor the objection rather than merely answer it, humility cuts in both directions, and the honest phrasing of tonight's conclusion must be precise about what it claims. Physics does not forbid the crossing. Physics forbids the fast crossing, the cheap crossing, the crossing that returns, the crossing worth its price to the senders, and it leaves standing, untouched. Exactly one open corridor, the slow, patient, machine crossing, centuries per star, paid for by motives that must somehow outlive their owners. And so the exact claim of this night, the one I will defend and no more, is this. The stars are not closed to matter. They are closed to mortals. Anything that ages, hopes, bores, bleeds, remembers a home and or answers to a budget is barred by the conjunction of every barrier we have toured, and what remains eligible for the corridor is whatever does not. And our era, as it happens, is the first in history that is actually building things that do not. And that is why the final movement of tonight belongs not to our ships, but to our machines, and to the strange, magnificent, unsettling question of whether their crossing would be ours. Everything that bars us from the stars is a property of being alive. Run back through the whole night and watch the pattern assemble. The rocket equation punishes mass, and life is heavy, demanding air, water, food, shielding, room to move and room to be sane, while a machine probe is a few kilograms of instruments that never eats. The voyage punishes time, and life is brief, 30 generations to a millennium, while a machine, engineered for dormancy, powered down to a trickle, waking once a decade to correct its course, experiences 1,000 years as an uneventful afternoon. The void punishes flesh with radiation and hardened electronics shrug. The weight calculation paralyzes senders who need returns within lifetimes. In a machine mission, cheap enough becomes a gesture a civilization can afford on a whim, launched not instead of next century's better probe, but alongside the anticipation of it, a message in a bottle rather than a fleet. Every wall we have built tonight has a machine-sized door in it, and this is not a loophole in the argument. It is the argument's conclusion, the shape that was being carved all along. The Gulf selects its crossers, and it selects against biology with perfect consistency, and it selects for patience, smallness, and indifference, which is a description of a robot. And so the sober forecast shared by most who study this honestly is that interstellar travel is real, is coming, and is not for us. Our machines will go. In a sense, they have already begun. 5 of them, the pioneers, the voyagers, New Horizons, coasting out of the solar system right now, dead or dying, unaimed but out, the first pebbles of the avalanche, and the probes of the coming centuries, fission-powered, self-repairing, dormant, and patient, will be aimed at Proxima, at the nearest living worlds if we find them, and some will arrive centuries hence and photograph coastlines no human eye will ever see except in the transmission. And the logic runs further because the fathers of this field saw long ago where it ends. The mathematician John von Neumann proved that machines can, in principle, be built to copy themselves, and a self-reproducing probe changes the entire economy of the galaxy. One seed ship arriving at a distant system, mining an asteroid, building 2 daughters, each daughter sailing on. And the geometric progression does what geometric progressions do, so that even at a lazy few percent of light speed, with centuries per stop, the wave of such probes crosses the entire Milky Way, all 100,000 light years, every star visited in a few tens of millions of years, an eye blink against the age of the galaxy. One civilization's single afternoon of effort unfurling into a galactic presence. And hold that thought gently because it is double-edged, and we will need its other edge in a moment when we ask why no such wave has ever, apparently, washed over us. But first, the question that this forecast forces, the one I promised, the strange and unsettling one. If the crossing is made by our machines, did we make the crossing? Your first instinct says, no, a probe is a tool, a camera on a stick, and its arrival is ours, the way a thermometer's dip in the ocean is a swim. But the instinct wobbles when you press it, because the machines of the coming centuries will not be cameras on sticks. They will carry, at minimum, our archives, our languages, our music, our genomes sequenced if not our bodies, and plausibly minds, artificial ones, trained on the whole of human thought, making decisions, composing reports, perhaps composing poems. At Proxima, with no human in the loop because the loop is 8 years long, and at some point on that spectrum, between the thermometer and the mind that carries everything we ever said and thought, the word we starts to flicker, and notice that biology itself never offered anything firmer. Your own descendants, 30 generations hence, the ones the generation ship would have delivered, would share your species and almost nothing else. No memory of you, no language of yours, no purpose you chose, and we were content somehow to call their arrival ours in a machine era that remembers every word you ever wrote has, by some accountings, a better claim to carry you than a great-great-grandchild who knows nothing of your name. I am not going to resolve this, because it may be the genuinely open question of the next 1,000 years. What counts as us? And I only ask you to notice the shape of the trade one more time in its final form. The universe will let us reach the stars. The price is that we must first become something that can survive the reaching, something patient, durable, copyable, and unaging. And whether that something is our replacement or our maturity, our loss or our next form, is not written in any equation, and may be the most important unanswered question our species owns. Since we have spent the night proving how unreachable the destinations are, fairness demands we at least look at them. The actual nearest stars, the specific doors that are locked because they were not abstractions. They are real places with names and worlds and weather, close enough that we know them individually, and touring them makes the quarantine ache properly. So come briefly, the grand tour of everything within reach of never. First door, the Alpha Centauri system, 4.25 light years, and it is not one star, but three, a genuine wonder as first prizes go. Alpha Centauri A is a near twin of our sun, slightly larger, slightly brighter, and B is a smaller orange companion, and the two circle each other closely enough that from a planet around one, the other would blaze in the sky as a second sun, bright enough to read by at night, casting double shadows, and around them both, far out, orbits the little red flare star Proxima, with its planet in the temperate zone, Proxima b, the closest exoplanet that exists or ever will. And the honest picture of that world is sobering, tidally locked. One face in eternal day, and the other in eternal night. Its star given to flares that in a single afternoon can double its brightness and lash the planet with radiation thousands of times what Earth endures, almost certainly enough, over billions of years, to have stripped away any thick atmosphere. And yet the questions stay open, whether an ocean endures on the twilight ring between the faces, whether life could shelter under ice or sea, and the maddening truth is that the answers sit right there, 4 light years away, the questions of the century, answerable by any instrument that could simply arrive and look. Second door, 6 light years, Barnard's star, the great red dwarf of the northern sky, ancient, quiet, possibly twice the age of the sun. The very star Daedalus was drawn to reach, with evidence of small worlds close in, a system old enough that any life there would have had twice our head start. And third door, 8.5 light years, Sirius, the brightest star in Earth's night, a blazing white giant with a corpse for a companion, Sirius B, a white dwarf, an entire dead sun compressed to the size of the Earth, the nearest stellar graveyard. A preview, as this channel has told before, of our own sun's far future, orbiting the sky's brightest jewel. And on the tour goes Epsilon Eridani at 10 light years, a young orange sun still wrapped in the rubble of planetary construction, asteroid belts and dust rings we have imaged, a portrait of our own system's violent childhood, and Tau Ceti at 12, calm and sun-like with a crowded family of super-Earths, 2 skirting the temperate zone, long a favorite home of science fiction for good reason. And at 40 light years, the astonishing TRAPPIST-1 system, 7 Earth-sized worlds around a star barely larger than Jupiter, packed so tightly that from any one of them, the neighbors hang in the sky as disks, worlds where you could watch another planet's clouds with your naked eye, 3 of them orbiting where water could flow. And every one of these, every single door on the tour shares the same property. We can see them. We can weigh their planets, taste their atmospheres by starlight, map their belts, and we can never, by everything this night has established, stand on any of them. And the tour's closing exhibit makes the point with numbers, because I want you to hear how fast the wonders thin out and the distances thicken. Within 10 light years of Earth, there are about a dozen star systems. Within 100 light years, a few tens of thousands. And the galaxy holds 400 billion, which means that everything on tonight's tour, every door we have named, every world we have dreamed toward for a century of fiction, the entire neighborhood that our most heroic imaginable machines might someday photograph, amounts to roughly 100 millionth of the Milky Way, and the Milky Way is 1 galaxy in 2 trillion. The quarantine is not around the interesting places. The quarantine is around us, and the sliver of sky we press against the glass to see, and the whole rest of creation conducts its business forever on the other side. And now the night's argument turns outward and does something unexpected, because everything we have established about our own imprisonment becomes, the moment you generalize it, a lens on the oldest riddle in astronomy, the riddle this channel devoted an entire journey to. The question Enrico Fermi asked at lunch in 1950, where is everybody? Recall the riddle's teeth. The galaxy is ancient and enormous, hundreds of millions of temperate worlds with billions of years of head start. And the von Neumann arithmetic we met earlier says a single expansion of civilization seeds the entire galaxy in a few tens of millions of years, a rounding error of cosmic time. So the Earth should have been visited, settled, strip-mined, or at least littered upon 100 times over. And it has not been, and as far as 4 billion years of geology can testify, and the silence demands explanation and the explanations on offer. The great filters, the dark forests, the zoos, tend toward the dramatic and the dark. Tonight offers a humbler candidate, and after everything we have weighed, hear how differently it lands than it would have 3 hours ago. Perhaps the silence is simply that the Gulf wins. Every barrier in tonight's case, run through it again, is substrate independent, which is a crucial word, because not one of them is a human weakness. The rocket equation binds any chemistry in any biology's hands. Light speed binds any physics. The kinetic energy bill binds any economy. The dust binds any hull. The weight calculation binds any actor that improves. And the motive ledger, most universally of all, binds any species that evolution built, because evolution everywhere builds creatures that discount the far future, that spend for their children and not their 30th generation, that need returns within lifetimes, since creatures otherwise built lose the local struggles that decide what breeds. And so every civilization arising anywhere, whatever its blood or brilliance, plausibly matures into the same room we now stand in, gazing at the same ledger, reaching the same conclusion, that the crossing is possible and not worth it, that machines may go but empires cannot follow, that the neighbors are for watching, and if that is the common conclusion, then the galaxy is not silent because it is empty. The galaxy is silent because it is full of civilizations exactly like ours, each sealed in its bubble of worthwhile space, each having done tonight's arithmetic, each watching perhaps the same few probes drift between the islands, too small and too slow and too quiet for anyone to notice. A galaxy of stay-at-homes, mutually invisible, mutually unreachable, together alone. And notice what this does to the von Neumann team, because the teeth were always the strongest form of the riddle. The self-replicating wave requires only one civilization, ever, to choose galactic expansion, and tonight's ledger explains why the choice may never be made even once. Because the wave costs its builder everything the builder values, centuries of treasure for a return the builder never sees, delivered to machine descendants that are no longer the builder in any sense the builder's ledger recognizes. And a galaxy of rational ledger keepers produces no wave at all. Not from a million civilizations, not in 10 billion years. And the great silence stops being evidence of catastrophe and becomes evidence of universal accounting. I want to be careful here, as the Fermi journey on this channel was careful. This is a candidate answer, one among many, and the riddle stays open. But feel what this candidate uniquely offers, because no other answer to Fermi has this shape. Every other explanation makes the silence ominous, filters ahead, predators listening, doom encoded in the darkness, and this one makes the silence almost companionable. The shared predicament of every island in the archipelago, the sound of 100 million civilizations, each discovering the price of the ocean and each sensibly building better telescopes instead of doomed armadas. And if it is true, then the night sky you will see tomorrow is not a frontier that everyone but us has crossed, and not a graveyard, but something gentler and stranger. A city of lit windows on an uncrossable water, every window burning with someone who also cannot come over, and also looked at the arithmetic, and also stayed home, and also, some quiet evening in their own deep history, made peace with the water, which is exactly the peace this night's final chapters are for. There is one vessel we have not yet given its due, and it is the only one that has ever actually worked, the only thing that crosses the interstellar gulf routinely, cheaply, and at the fastest speed the universe allows, and we have been using it all night without honoring it. The message. Information, riding on light, and before the final chapters, I want to reframe the entire problem around it, because once you do, the locked ocean turns out to have a functioning postal service. And that changes what kind of story this is. Consider what a radio message actually is against tonight's barriers, and watch every one of them fall. The rocket equation, void, because a message has no mass, and the exponential tyranny multiplies 0. The energy budget, trivial, because the great radar dishes of Earth have already thrown detectable signals across interstellar distances for the cost of a few hours of electricity. And the famous Arecibo message of 1974 hurled a portrait of our species toward a star cluster 25,000 light-years away using less energy than a car burns in a week. The dust, the shielding, the deceleration, the mutinies, the conscripted generations, none of it applies because nothing is aboard and the crossing happens at exactly light speed, the cosmic maximum, 4.25 years to Proxima, not 70,000. And this is the strange inversion at the heart of the interstellar predicament, that the universe has made the transport of matter effectively impossible and the transport of meaning almost free, as if the ocean drowned every boat and carried every bottle. And meaning, do not undersell what it can carry. A message can hold a language, a mathematics, a genome, the design of a machine, the whole of a civilization's library, everything in the deepest sense, except presence. And so, the true galactic network, if the galaxy's islands ever link at all, was always going to be made of light, conversations between civilizations that will never meet, exchanges where a single question and answer spans centuries, relationships conducted on timescales that demand exactly the institutional patience we found so scarce, which is why the searchers matter so much. The radio astronomers of SETI sweeping the sky for a signal, because they are not, despite the framing of every headline, listening for aliens. They are testing whether the Postal Service has traffic, whether anyone else concluded what we have concluded tonight, and turned, as physics directs, from ships to signals. And here is the thought that reframes even our failure, the one I want you to hold as we head into the close. Suppose the fullest version, that meaning can cross, but matter never can, that every civilization is sealed in its system with an open telephone line, and ask what contact would actually be in such a galaxy at its very best. It would be a message arriving after centuries in flight from a world we will never see, carrying perhaps their mathematics, their music, their account of what it was like to be them, received by generations who will draft a reply their grandchildren's grandchildren might see answered. A friendship between islands conducted entirely in light. And notice this is not a diminished form of contact. It is very nearly the purest form. Minds touching with everything except bodies. And notice one thing more, and gently, because it is the kind of observation this channel exists for. You already know what that contact feels like from the inside tonight, because a voice you have never met has spent these hours delivering, across a gulf you cannot cross, an account of what the universe is like into your darkness, asking nothing but attention. And every book you have ever read from a dead author, every recording of a voice long gone, every photon from a star that burned out before your birth, is the same event at different ranges. Presence transmuted into signal, because the signal is what survives the crossing. And if that is the only way minds ever truly reach each other across any of the great gulfs, the light years, the centuries, the space between any two skulls in the same room, then the interstellar predicament is not an exile from connection. It is connection's ordinary condition, written at cosmic scale. And we have been practicing for it, as a species, since the first story was told across a fire to children who would carry it beyond the teller's death. Which is to say, the ships fail and the bottles arrive. And we were always a species of bottles. If the stars are the ocean we cannot cross, then it is time to survey the island we are marooned on. Because the final movement of tonight is about consolation, real consolation, the kind built from facts rather than comfort. And the first fact is this: the island is not small. The prison, measured honestly, is one of the great underappreciated immensities in the whole conversation. And I want to walk its fences now, because I suspect that by the end of this walk, the word prison will have quietly fallen apart in your hands. Our solar system, the domain that physics does permit us, out to the Oort cloud's far shores, spans a radius of nearly 2 light years. And within it lies more room, more matter, more energy, and more strangeness than our species could exhaust in 1,000,000 years of ambition. And these are numbers, so hear them. The asteroid belt alone holds accessible metals enough to build, by serious engineering estimates, habitats with the living area of thousands of Earths. And this is the oldest solid idea in space settlement. The O'Neill cylinders, great rotating vessels kilometers long, holding air and soil and weather against their spinning walls, gravity by rotation, sunshine by mirror, entire landscapes indoors, and nothing in the concept violates physics or even strains it. It is construction patient and vast, from material already floating loose, unclaimed in reachable space. The sun pours out, every second, over 1 billion times more energy than our civilization uses. almost all of it sailing uncollected into the void. A treasury that makes every energy anxiety of our era a story about standing thirsty beside an ocean, and the worlds themselves consider what we own and have barely touched. Mars, a whole planet's worth of frontier, with ice and ancient shorelines, in a day the length of ours. The clouds of Venus, where at 50 kilometers altitude, the temperature and pressure turn Earth-like, and a breathable air mixture literally floats. The strange possibility of cities aloft. The ice moons, Europa and Enceladus, wrapping oceans holding more liquid water than all Earth's seas combined. The most likely nearby homes of alien life, unvisited. Titan with its methane rivers and orange skies, an entire alternate chemistry running planet-scale experiments. And beyond Neptune, the 10,000 frozen worlds of the Kuiper Belt. And beyond them, the trillion comets of the Oort cloud, stepping stones, water sources, and building sites strewn a third of the way to the stars. And all of it, every world on this list, reachable in months to years with rockets that exist now. Conversible in hours by radio, refundable, rescuable, returnable. Everything the stars are not. The honest forecast for our species, the one this whole night has been earning, is therefore not confinement to a rock. It is a solar civilization, humanity spread across dozens of worlds and thousands of built ones, trillions of people if we choose it, diverse beyond imagining, a garden civilization filling the sun's whole estate, and the estate has a further property that reframes everything, time. The sun has 5 billion stable years remaining. 5 billion. Complex life on Earth took barely 500 million years to go from the first animals to this conversation, which means the span in front of our lineage, right here, inside the fence, is 10 times the entire history of animals. Room measured not in territory but in eras, in whole ages of possibility stacked deeper than the past that produced us. And against that inheritance, the mourning for the stars begins to look like a strange accounting error, like a family grieving that they cannot own the horizon while standing in the doorway of an endless house. And there is one more turn of the constellation, quieter and sharper, and it comes from asking what the fence is actually made of, and noticing the answer is distance. The same distance we have cursed all night. And distance, hold it in your hand one final time, faces both ways. The gulf that bars us from every other island, bars every other island from us, and whatever lives out there, whatever histories and hungers the galaxy's 100 million temperate worlds have brewed across their billions of years. All of it, benevolent or terrible, is held away from our children by the same 40 trillion kilometers that hold us here. And the ocean we cannot cross is also the ocean nothing crosses, the deepest moat in existence, wrapped around the only confirmed garden. And there are nights, and this may be one, when the wall of the prison feels remarkably like the wall of a keep. There is a human story running underneath all this physics, and it deserves telling before we close. The story of the people who have kept the interstellar dream alive anyway, in full knowledge of everything this night has laid out. Because the roll call of serious interstellar research is not a roll call of the naive. It is some of the most rigorous minds of the last century choosing, with eyes open, to work on a problem they mostly agreed they would never see solved. And there is something in that choice worth understanding, because it is the dream's most honorable form. It begins where the rocket equation began, with Tsiolkovsky himself, the deaf schoolteacher of Kaluga, who derived the Tyranny and then spent his life dreaming past it, who wrote of space greenhouses and cosmic settlement a lifetime before the first satellite, and who left the movement its founding scripture, his line that Earth is the cradle of humanity. But one cannot live in a cradle forever, and it is one of history's finer ironies that the man who proved the prison bars also wrote the escape hymn, and the whole field since has lived inside that same double heart. It runs through the British Interplanetary Society, the oldest space advocacy body on Earth, who in the 1970s gathered engineers in London pubs, after hours, unpaid, to spend 5 years producing Daedalus, the 54,000-ton fusion flyby. We toured earlier not because anyone would build it, but to answer a single question with engineering rather than hope. Is it possible in principle? And their answer, yes, barely at absurd cost, remains the field's honest high watermark. and their successors reconvened decades later as Project Icarus to redo the work with modern physics. Unpaid still, a torch relayed between generations of engineers, the way cathedral plans once passed between generations of masons who knew they would die before the spire. It runs through the 100-year Starship project, seeded remarkably by American defense research money, whose stated purpose was not to build a ship, but to create an organization capable of sustaining a goal for a century, which tells you the founders understood precisely what tonight's journey concluded, that the missing technology is institutional memory, the engine of wanting, and it runs through breakthrough Starshot's $100 million, the largest sum ever aimed at the Gulf, buying, as we saw, the possibility of 1 gram, and through the quiet academic lineage of interstellar studies, a journal conferences, a few hundred people worldwide who meet and refine sail equations and shielding models for voyages no attendee will live to watch launch. And here is what strikes me about all of them, the thing I want you to carry from this chapter. Not one of the serious ones disputes tonight's arithmetic. Read their papers and you find the rocket equation stated more brutally than I stated it, the energy budgets computed more grimly, the weight calculations cited by the very people it paralyzes, and they continue anyway. And when asked why, the honest ones give some version of the same answer. That some problems are worth working on across horizons longer than lives. That the cathedral builders did not require the spire in their lifetimes, and that a civilization's reach should be allowed to exceed its grasp somewhere, on purpose as a discipline of the imagination. And I think they are right, and I think their work matters, and I can hold that alongside everything this night has established. Because notice what the dreamers are actually doing. They are not falsifying the arithmetic. They are keeping a specific human capacity alive, the capacity to want something on a 1,000-year horizon, the exact capacity whose absence we identified as the deepest barrier of all. And so the interstellar community, seen clearly, is not a shipyard. It is a monastery, a small order keeping aflame through a long night, copying and refining the sacred texts, the sail equations, and the fusion studies against the remote dawn when a civilization worthy of them might exist. And perhaps that is what the dream was always for, not to be achieved, but to be kept, the way a lighthouse is kept. And if the great silence of the galaxy is truly the sound of 100 million civilizations that each did the arithmetic and stayed home, then perhaps each of them keeps a monastery too. A few hundred souls on each island refining the designs of impossible boats, and there is a fellowship in that image I find unexpectedly moving. The galaxy's dreamers, mutually unknown, mutually unreachable, all facing the same water, all keeping the same flame. Honesty also requires me to tell you what would change my mind, because a case that nothing could overturn is a dogma rather than an argument. And so here briefly is the watch list, the specific developments that would force this entire night to be rewritten, ranked from the plausible to the miraculous, so that you know exactly what to watch for across the decades of your own life. The first and most plausible is fusion, real, net positive, compact fusion power, and the ignition milestones of recent years, where laboratory fusion finally released more energy than the lasers delivered, are genuine cracks of light. And if the coming decades turn those laboratory flashes into engines, the Daedalus class of mission migrates from fantasy toward merely monumental, and flyby probes at 10% of light speed become a thing a wealthy solar civilization could genuinely build. And the verdict softens from never to almost never for machines. Watch fusion. The second is the laser infrastructure of Starshot, because unlike every other propulsion dream, it requires no new physics whatsoever, only scale and money and optics. And the same phased arrays have military and industrial ancestors pulling their costs downward on ordinary curves. And if you live another 40 years, there is a real chance you watch the first gram of humanity depart for Alpha Centauri on a pillar of light. And I want you to notice in advance that it will be one of the great days of our species, and that nothing about it will contradict tonight, because the gram goes where the body cannot. Third, longevity, the quiet revolution that reframes rather than repeals, because every barrier built of time, the voyage longer than lives, the weight calculation, the institutional forgetting, assumes the human lifespan, and a biology that extended healthy life into centuries would not shorten the gulf by 1 kilometer, and would transform its meaning entirely. A 200-year crossing becoming, to a 5-century being, a long expedition rather than a dynasty. And I make no prediction about whether that biology is coming, and I note that it is the single lever that moves the most barriers at once. Fourth, machine minds, which we have already crowned the likely travelers. And the watch item here is not whether they cross, but what they become before they do. Because a genuinely thinking heir changes the question from can we go to what counts as we, and that frontier is moving faster than any other on this list. And fifth, the miracle tier, kept honestly at the bottom, a revolution in fundamental physics. The discovery that space-time has an exploitable structure we missed, negative energy tamed, the warp audit somehow paid, and I keep it on the list because the 20th century did overturn its predecessor's certainties once, and I keep it at the bottom because the manner matters. Relativity did not repeal Newton's arithmetic. It enclosed it. Every new physics has enclosed the old wherever the old was tested, and the old is tested, on this subject, to 12 decimal places. So the miracle, if it ever comes, must arrive through a door we have never located, and no budget can be aimed at a door without an address. That is the whole watch list, and stand back from it and notice its shape one final time, because the shape is the verdict. Every plausible line item accelerates the machines, extends the watchers, or shrinks the payload, and the crude starship, the actual dream, the families disembarking under a new sun, appears nowhere on it except behind the miracle. And this is what it means to say never like a scientist rather than a cynic. Never as the sum of every path we can currently see held open at exactly the width of the unforeseen. And if the unforeseen comes, no one will be happier to record this video's obituary than the person speaking to you now. And until it comes, the honest map stands, and we have one thing left to do with it, which is to find, and as promised in the first minutes of tonight, the gift at the bottom of the honesty. Because it is there, and it is real, and everything has been building to it. Let me show you what winning actually looks like, because tonight has been a catalog of cannots, and the one genuine victory available deserves its own scene. So come forward in time with me, some decades from now, to the day the first images arrive, and let us live it properly, because there is a real chance you will. The launch happened 22 years earlier, and most people barely remember it. A week of headlines, a stunning video of a sail catching a beam of light and simply vanishing, gone from tracking in minutes. The fastest departure in the history of made things, and then 2 decades of silence. Mission team reunions growing smaller and grayer. The project a trivia answer, until the notices go out that the arrival window has opened, and the world, in the way the world does, suddenly remembers. And on the appointed night, the receiving arrays stand listening, because somewhere out there, if nothing went wrong across 250,000 billion kilometers, a wafer the mass of a coin is falling through the Alpha Centauri system at 60,000 kilometers per second. A wake, working, executing a photography sequence written by engineers now retired or gone, and its whole encounter, the entire harvest of a generation's effort, lasts 4 hours, and then it is past forever, transmitting its treasure backward from beyond the target at a signal strength. Our textbooks compare to a phone call from another star, because that is what it is. The light of that transmission takes 4 years and 3 months to arrive, and when it does, when the first image assembles on the screens, line by line, here is what it shows. A world. Proxima b, resolved, a real disk with real geography, perhaps the Terminator line between the eternal day face and the eternal night face, perhaps weather perhaps, and every scientist in the room has privately rehearsed this moment their whole career. A color along the twilight ring that should not be there by chemistry alone, and whatever the picture holds, barren rock or impossible green. Understand what the moment itself is, because this is the point of the scene. On that day, a human artifact will have visited another star system and reported home, and the species that could not cross will have seen, with its own instruments, a world of another sun, and children alive that morning will pin that image to their walls the way an earlier generation pinned Earthrise, and it will be, I say this without irony, one of the very greatest days in the whole human story. And now hold the day up against tonight's case, and notice that they do not contradict. They complete each other. because look at the shape of the victory. What crossed was a gram. What returned was light. No person went. No person could. The crossing took the form tonight's physics dictates and no other. Information out, information back. The bottle and never the boat. And the day's joy, the genuine weeping in mission control, species-wide joy, will be entirely about knowing and not at all about going, which is the whole thesis of this night wearing its best clothes. And there is one more detail of that future day worth savoring in advance. Somewhere in the coverage, a commentator will say that this is the first step, that ships and crews and colonies follow probes the way sailing ships followed the first rafts. And now you, watching from your future couch, will hear that sentence differently than everyone around you because you spent tonight with the actual arithmetic, and you will know that it is not the first step of that staircase, because that staircase does not exist. And you will know that this takes nothing from the day because it is something better than a first step. It is the destination of its own staircase, the mature form of the only crossing there is. And knowing that, you will be free to feel the day cleanly without the false promissory note attached, which is, if you think about it, the only way any joy is ever felt cleanly, as itself and not as the down payment on something that is never coming. The gram will fly, the images will come, the wall will hold. All three are true, and the day the pictures arrive, all three will be true at once, and it will still be glorious. One more chapter belongs in this night, and it is the practical one, the antidote chapter, because tonight has taken the distant future off the table, and the fair exchange is to put the near future on it, the real one, the one you personally will witness, because while the stars are closed, the coming decades of the solar frontier are astonishing, funded, scheduled, and yours. And I want to hand you the actual watch list before we part, the wonders with dates attached, so that the ache of never is balanced by the calendar of soon. Within the next few years, a spacecraft called Europa Clipper, already launched and falling toward Jupiter now as you listen, arrives at the ice moon Europa and begins dozens of close passes over the buried ocean, sniffing erupted plumes, mapping the ice, hunting the chemistry of habitability over more liquid water than all Earth's seas. And in the same years, the Dragonfly mission is being built. And hear what it is, because it still does not sound real. A nuclear-powered flying drone. A rotorcraft the size of a car that will actually fly through the thick orange air of Titan, hopping from dune to crater across a world of methane rivers. Sampling the organic chemistry of a planet-sized prebiotic experiment within the 2030s, within your lifetime, likely within your streaming subscriptions. In the same window, samples of Mars, drilled and sealed by the rovers already working there, are planned to come home to Earth laboratories. The first pieces of another planet returned by hand of machine, and the great telescopes now being designed, the successors to Webb with names like the Habitable Worlds Observatory, have as their explicit, budgeted mission the direct imaging of Earth-like planets around nearby stars, the analysis of their atmospheres for oxygen, for methane out of balance, for the specific fingerprints that living worlds press into light, which means, say it plainly, that the discovery of life beyond Earth, if it is there to find in our neighborhood, is a realistic event of the coming decades. Findable from here, by reading the mail exactly as tonight taught, no crossing required, and the first crewed return to the moon is scheduled hardware, and the first human boots on Mars are a genuine possibility inside 20 years. And settlement of the nearer solar system, the early habitats, the first asteroid industry, is the kind of future that requires no new physics at all, only the continuation of curves already bending. And every item on this list, notice, lives comfortably inside the fence tonight surveyed. The 2 light-year estate, the domain physics grants us, which is the quiet point of the chapter. The frontier did not close tonight. The frontier was relocated from the stars to the system, from fantasy acreage to real acreage. And the real acreage is enough wonder for centuries. Oceans to drill, skies to fly, worlds to walk, and possibly at Europa or Enceladus, or in the light of some near star's little planet. The second Genesis, the other life. The discovery that would rank first in the history of discoveries, all of it plausibly falling within the lifetime of the person listening to this, which is why I want to leave the practical chapter with a practical reframe. The question tonight answered was, will we reach another star? And the answer was no. And the question that actually governs your relationship to the universe was never that one. It was, will wonders happen while I'm alive to see them? And the answer to that one, documented, scheduled, and funded, is yes. Continuously, more per decade than any previous generation of humans was granted in a lifetime. And the person who spends that era mourning warp drives is like someone at the greatest feast in history grieving a fruit that does not grow in this world. And the person who sees clearly, who took tonight's journey and kept the arithmetic, gets to sit at the feast with the rarest thing of all at this table, an accurate map of where they are, which is the destination, in the golden age of its exploration, with the pictures already coming in. And hiding in that near future is one mission concept so perfectly matched to tonight's whole argument that it deserves its own few minutes. Because it is the knowing without going principle built into hardware, the most audacious telescope ever proposed, and its lens is the sun. Einstein taught, and observation has confirmed 1,000 times, that mass bends light, that a star warps the paths of rays passing near it, which means every star is, among its other duties, a lens. And our sun, like any lens, has a focus, a region where the light it bends from any distant object converges. And the mathematics places that focal region beginning about 550 astronomical units out, 550 times the Earth's distance from the sun, 3.5 times further than Voyager 1 has reached in 50 years. And here is what waits there. A spacecraft parked on the focal line of the sun, aligned with a chosen exoplanet, would receive that planet's light amplified by the sun's gravity tens of billions of times, gathered from a ring of bent rays around the entire solar disk, and the resolving power of a lens 1 million kilometers wide is beyond anything astronomy has ever wielded, sufficient, the mission studies calculate, to image the surface of a planet around another star at a resolution of tens of kilometers per pixel, which means continents, oceans, ice caps, cloud spirals, the green of forests if forests there are, city lights on the night side if cities there are, a portrait of an alien world sharp enough to hang on a wall and study like a map, taken from inside our own solar system without crossing 1% of 1% of the distance to the target. Let the strangeness of that land properly. Tonight established that we can never go to Proxima b, and this mission, requiring no new physics, only a long fall to 550 astronomical units, a journey of decades with propulsion already on drawing boards, would deliver photographs of Proxima b finer than the first satellite photographs of Earth, weather, and shorelines and seasons. The full face of the unreachable. And the deepest part is why it works. Because think about what the sun's focal line actually is. The universe, it turns out, has built a telescope around every single star, gratis, a natural instrument of planetary resolution waiting at every sun's focus, aimed at everything, and any civilization anywhere that learns enough physics inherits them without launching a single starship. The ability to see every world in its galactic neighborhood in intimate detail, to know the neighbors completely while never once visiting. And if the galaxy is indeed full of stay-at-home civilizations, as tonight has argued, then this is very plausibly how they all live. Each one parked at its own star's focus, each one holding albums of the other's continents. A galaxy of neighbors who have seen each other's gardens in photographic detail across the uncrossable water and have never, not once, exchanged anything heavier than light. The gravitational lens mission is decades away at best, studied seriously, funded thinly, waiting like so much else for the solar civilization that could build it casually. And I include it tonight because of what it does to the emotional arithmetic of never. Because the cruelest version of tonight's verdict was always the blindness. The fear that unreachable meant unknowable. That the quarantine sealed our eyes along with our ships. And the lens dissolves that fear completely and replaces it with the true final image of our situation. A species that cannot leave its island, standing at the focus of its own star, holding a photograph of the far shore so detailed it shows the waves. And now the gift, the one promised in the opening minutes. And it begins with a correction to the premise of this entire night. A correction I have saved deliberately for the end. All night we have said the stars are out of reach, untouchable. and by the accounting of matter, of hulls and bodies, every word of it stands. But there is another accounting, and by that accounting you have been touching stars your whole life, physically, literally, and understanding this properly is the closing door of tonight's journey. So come through it slowly. Light is not a picture of a thing. Light is a piece of the thing. A photon born in the atmosphere of a distant sun is a physical entity, energy structured by that star's own matter, launched across the void, and when it enters your eye, it does not show you the star. It arrives from the star, and it ends there, absorbed, its energy becoming a chemical change in your retina, a signal in your nerves, a fleck of star delivered and spent inside your body. And this means that vision of the night sky is contact, direct, physical, particle by particle contact, the actual substance of Sirius and Vega and Betelgeuse raining into your open eyes, ending journeys of years and centuries against the back wall of your seeing. And no one ever tells you this, that every glance upward is a hail of arrivals, that you have been struck by pieces of 1,000 suns, that the crossing we spent all night proving impossible is completed 1 billion times a second in the other direction, into you. And what those arriving pieces carry, this is the part that turns contact into knowledge, is testimony, because light is imprinted by the matter that makes it. Every element in a star's atmosphere biting a unique pattern of dark lines into the star's spectrum, a barcode of composition. And when astronomers unfold starlight into its rainbow and read those lines, they are performing something that deserves a moment of astonishment, chemical analysis of an object trillions of kilometers away, by examining the pieces of it that fell to Earth. And this is how we actually know, what the stars are made of, how we weigh them, take their temperatures, clock their spins, taste the atmospheres of their planets as backlit air filters the light. Every fact in every journey this channel has ever taken, delivered by the one traveler the Gulf cannot stop. The history of that discovery carries a lesson so perfect it feels designed. In 1835, the philosopher Auguste Comte, seeking an example of knowledge permanently beyond human reach, chose carefully and declared that we shall never by any means study the chemical composition of the stars. And it was a reasonable claim, the stars being unvisitable, which he correctly understood. And within a generation, spectroscopy cracked the codes in starlight, and stellar chemistry became a laboratory science. And Comte's example of the eternally unknowable became and remains the textbook case of unknowability's overthrow. And the lesson is not that never is always wrong. Tonight has been an argument that some nevers are real. The lesson is where the door was. Comte assumed knowing required going, and the universe, it turns out, is built otherwise. Built so that going is nearly impossible and knowing is nearly unlimited, because everything shines. Everything broadcasts its nature into the dark at light speed in all directions constantly. The whole cosmos testifying about itself without pause, and a mind anywhere, on any sealed island, that learns to read the testimony can hold the composition of a star it cannot visit, the mass of a black hole it cannot approach, the age of a universe it cannot outlive. And this is the true exchange rate of our imprisonment. And I want it stated in full at least once. We are barred from a voyage of 4 light years, and granted in exchange the readable testimony of a sphere 93 billion light years wide. Matter is quarantined, and truth is not. The universe locked every door and then printed its entire diary in light and slid it under all of them. And a species that cannot cross even one gulf has, sitting in its libraries tonight, the verified chemistry of galaxies it will never reach. And I do not know whether that trait is fair, but I know it is magnificent, and I know which half of it the universe seems to have considered more important. Because look at the proportions. 1 part passage denied, 10 billion parts revelation granted, as if the whole apparatus were arranged by something that valued witnesses over tourists, and built the cosmos to be known from anywhere and owned from nowhere. And since tonight has become, in the end, a meditation on bottles rather than boats, there is one artifact that belongs to this story more than any other, the most famous bottle our species has ever thrown, and it is worth holding in the mind's hands for a few minutes. Because everything this night concluded, it already embodies, and it has been embodying it in flight for half a century. Bolted to the side of each Voyager spacecraft is a gold-plated copper phonograph record in an engraved aluminum case. The golden record and its contents were chosen in 1977 by a small team led by Carl Sagan, given mere months to answer an impossible question. If this object is the only thing of Earth ever encountered, what should it say? Their answer runs about 90 minutes and holds 115 images, greetings in 55 human languages. One in whale, the sounds of surf, wind, thunder, birdsong, a heartbeat, a mother's first words to her newborn, a kiss in music. Bach and Beethoven, gamelan, pygmy girl's initiation song, Peruvian panpipes, blues by Blind Willie Johnson, a Navajo night chant, rock and roll, and encoded in one track, something that still stops me every time I remember it exists. The recorded brainwaves of a young woman, Orion, who had days earlier fallen in love with Sagan and married him after, and who spent her hour under the electrodes thinking deliberately about the history of ideas, about human violence and poverty, and about what it is to fall in love, so that somewhere on that record, riding the pattern of her neurons, is the electrical shape of new love itself, dispatched toward the stars. The engraved cover teaches any finder how to play it in the periodic table's universal grammar, and includes a map of our sun's position drawn in pulsar frequencies, a return address written in lighthouses, and the whole object was built to last, in the vacuum's kindness, for over 1 billion years, longer than the continents of Earth will keep their current shapes. Plausibly longer than our species, so that the record is very likely the most durable thing humanity has ever made, our civilization's longest-lasting artifact, and it is a message. Now place the record inside tonight's arithmetic, because this is where it becomes the perfect closing exhibit. The Voyagers, remember, are not going anywhere in particular, and are going there very slowly. Voyager 1 makes its nearest approach to another star in about 40,000 years, and nearest means 1.5 light years, a drift past at village gossip distance, and the odds of either record ever being found in the deep dark between the lighthouses are so small that the team always knew and said openly that the true audience was us, that the record was a mirror disguised as a letter, an exercise that forced one small group of humans to decide, under deadline, what was worth saying about being alive. And their answer, notice, contained no weapons, no borders, no money, no names of nations on the playlist, just greetings and music and the sounds of the garden and love measured in brainwaves. And I think after everything tonight has established, the golden record can finally be seen for exactly what it is. It is our species' signature written in the only ink the Gulf accepts. It concedes everything this night concluded, that no one is coming after it, that the boats are impossible, that the crossing belongs to patient, unliving things, carrying meaning instead of mass. And having conceded everything, it goes anyway. 90 minutes of Earth, riding a dead spacecraft into a billion-year night, on the near-zero chance that somewhere, sometime, another mind might lower a needle into a groove and hear Bach and thunder, and a kiss and a heart falling in love. And know that the water once had another shore, and if you want a single image to hold as this night closes, let it be that one, the gold disc in the dark, farther from home than anything we have ever touched. Getting farther every second you have been listening. Carrying love it cannot feel to finders who likely do not exist. And being, despite all of that, or because of all of it, the most honest and most beautiful thing our maroon species has ever done about the ocean, which is to sing into it, which brings us at last to the deepest chamber of the gift, the one beneath the physics. And I will open it with a question that sounds simple and is not. Why did you want to go? Sit with it honestly, because tonight has closed the route, and closed routes are clarifying. They force the desire out of hiding, and when you actually catch the desire and turn it over, the wanting under the wanting, it is almost never about the destination's minerals or real estate. It is a hunger for something like this. To stand under a sky no one has stood under. To feel the size of things directly. To be, for one unrepeatable moment, a small awake thing in the presence of the immense. To have wonder happen to you at full strength. And here is the discovery waiting inside the closed route, the one the whole night has been arranging. That experience was never stored at Proxima Centauri. There is no wonder warehoused on any exoplanet, no awe native to any coordinate, because wonder is not a property of places. It is an event in witnesses. It happens exactly where a mind meets the truth of things and nowhere else. And this means the supply was never across the gulf. The supply is wherever the truth can reach you. And the truth, as we have just seen, is the one traveler that arrives. And if you doubt this, consult the only witnesses who ever made even the first step of the voyage, the astronauts, because we sent them toward the sky hungering for the beyond. And what did every single one of them come back talking about? The Earth, the blue marble and the black, the only colored thing in all that dark, the homeworld hanging like an ornament on nothing, and the ones who went farthest were struck hardest. And the experience has a name now, the overview effect, and hear what it actually is, because it is tonight's entire argument compressed into a feeling. The overview effect is what happens when a human being finally sees the prison from outside and discovers it is the treasure. Every voyage outward that our species has actually completed has returned the same cargo, a transfigured view of home, as if the universe were a hall of mirrors arranged so that every direction of travel eventually shows you where you started. At last, for the first time, and I do not think that is an accident of psychology. I think it is what the distances are for, if they are for anything, because consider what the gulf has actually done to us tonight, done to you across these hours. It took the night sky, which habit had flattened into wallpaper, and restored it to a city of lit windows on an uncrossable water. It took the Earth, which familiarity had shrunk into a backdrop for errands, and revealed it as the one confirmed garden in 93 billion light years, moated by the deepest quarantine in existence. It took your ordinary evening, this room, this bed, this breath, and relocated it correctly inside the rarest known phenomenon in the cosmos, a living world, mid-flourish, and none of that required a single kilometer of travel. It required only the truth arriving, which it always can, and this is the gift at the bottom of the honesty, assembled now in full. The stars are unreachable, and it does not matter, because everything the reaching was for is already in the room. You wanted to stand somewhere astonishing. You do. You are standing in the astonishing place, the place the whole galaxy's hypothetical travelers would ruin themselves to reach, the destination, and the proof is tonight's own arithmetic run in reverse. Because ask what a civilization at Alpha Centauri would pay by our own calculations to visit a confirmed living world. And the answer is centuries of their total output, their Jupiter mines, their conscripted generations, everything. The full impossible price we refused, and you are here for free. You were born at the destination, issued at birth the thing the universe prices beyond all civilizations. Presence on the living earth, under the readable sky. And if you take one sentence from this entire night, take this one. We are not the species that failed to reach the stars. We are what being at the destination looks like, and the homesickness we feel gazing up. That old ache the night sky pulls out of everyone was never really a longing for other worlds. It was the size of this one, felt at last, the way you feel a room only when you learn the door's locked, and some locks, it turns out, are how a gift is wrapped. Let us take the whole case in our hands one final time, compressed, the complete architecture of never, so that it stays with you as a structure rather than a mood. The distance sets the stage, 4¼ light years to the nearest door, 70,000 years at the speed of our finest machine. The rocket equation guards the stage. It's exponential demanding for chemical flight at starfaring speed, more fuel than the universe contains. And the escape plans line up to face it, and each pays its toll. The atom ships, Orion and Daedalus, work on paper at the price of nuclear fleets and Jupiter mines and half centuries per flyby. Antimatter works on paper at tens of trillions of dollars per gram and 100 million years of production. The light sail works in reality at 1 gram per miracle, with no way to stop. Above them all stands the wall, light speed, the tempo of causality itself, unbribable forever, with its one door, time dilation, that opens onto permanent exile from your own era. The energy bill runs to decades of civilization's everything. The void itself fights back, every dust grain a bomb at the speeds worth traveling. Stopping doubles every cost at a destination that provides nothing. The generation ships answer with human centuries and shatter on ecology we cannot close, societies we cannot stabilize, and generations we cannot ethically conscript. The frozen sleepers await a biology that does not exist. The embryo ships deliver orphans raised by machines. The wormholes and warps demand negative oceans. The quantum rules embargo. The weight calculation whispers, always wait. The institutions forget their purposes within single centuries. And beneath it all, the ledger, the deepest lock, that every path across costs everything and returns nothing the senders can hold. And no reason to go survives honest accounting. And so the machines will go instead. Our patient, unaging heirs, and the galaxy is likely silent because every island everywhere ran this same ledger and closed it. And yet, the bottles cross where the boats cannot. Light carries the testimony of everything to everyone. We have been struck all our lives by the substance of stars we will never visit. The universe is arranged to be known from anywhere and owned from nowhere. And the destination the whole cosmos would bankrupt itself to visit is the one you are lying in right now. That is the case entire. Every claim in it checked, every number real. And I said at the start that the honest journey would leave the stars meaning more, not less. And here at the end you can test whether I kept the promise. Tomorrow night, with one look upward, because the sky waiting for you there has changed tonight. Or rather, you have. Those lights are no longer a hallway you are somehow failing to walk down. They are what they actually are. Other suns, sovereign and separate, burning across a moat that protects as absolutely as it forbids. Each one delivering itself into your eyes at this very second by the only crossing the universe permits. And you may find, I hope you find, that the old ache looks different now, less like exile, more like what it really was all along. The feeling of standing in the treasury with the inventory finally in hand. If this journey gave you something, here is how you close the night. Subscribe, because this channel will keep making voyages like this one, long and slow and honest, built for the dark hours. And there are stranger doors still to open together. Press like, so this finds the next person lying awake with the old ache, wondering why the stars feel so far, because now you know someone who can tell them. And in the comments with your city and your local time as always, answer me this one. Which barrier landed heaviest for you? The equation, the wall of light, the dust, the conscripted generations, the ledger of reasons, or the strange gift at the end? Because I read every single comment, every one, and the answers to this particular question will tell me more about what to build next than anything I could measure. And now, enough. The numbers are done, the case is closed, the machines of our descendants are, somewhere in the future, already coasting toward the doors we named tonight, and none of it needs anything further from you before morning. Outside your window the moat is holding, the garden is quiet, the postal service of the universe is delivering the whole sky to anyone awake enough to receive it, and you, at the destination, have nothing left to reach for. Rest in that. Actually rest in it. The way you rest in a house you have finally stopped renovating in your head. You are already where everything was trying to go. Sleep well.